Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. He shouldn't have been looking at me like that. Not with his wife on one side of him and my husband laughing on the other. But even over the music, over the clinking glasses and stupid dares, I could feel his gaze like fingers on my skin lingering too long, softening when our eyes met, as if the room had shrunk until it was just the two of us breathing the same charged air. We were supposed to be having fun. Just two young married couples, a harmless game night. A silly idea to play Whisper Your Secret because the Truth or Dare card started feeling too tame. Sit in a circle. Lean in close. Share a secret nobody else can hear. Laugh it off. Move on. That was the plan. But the second his shoulder brushed mine and I caught the faint scent of his cologne, different from my husband's, sharper, forbidden, my heart skipped in a way it hadn't in a long time. I kept telling myself it was the wine, the dim living room lights, the playlist humming slow, sensual songs that didn't match the innocent game we pretended to play. Our knees touched under the table by accident, and neither of us moved away. His wife was glowing carefree. My husband was grinning and relaxed, and there I was, sitting between comfort and danger, pretending my cheeks were warm because of the room, not because of him. When it was my turn, I leaned toward my husband, whispered something safe, something small. We laughed. It passed, but when it became his turn, when he leaned toward me, his breath brushing my ear, the world dropped into silence. I felt his hesitation, the way his lips hovered near my skin as if he was fighting himself. And then I heard it low, rough, and trembling. I want you for a heartbeat. Everything inside me froze. Then something in me that had been quiet for years woke up. I turned my head, meeting his eyes from inches away, feeling my pulse race, feeling the weight of every choice I'd ever made. My lips parted and before I could stop myself, I whispered back, "Then take me." And in that single stolen moment, with our spouses just inches away, the game stopped being a game. The room came rushing back in a blur of laughter and music, but it felt different now, sharper around the edges. His words were still echoing in my ear, wrapped around my heartbeat like a secret I wasn't ready to own. I pulled back just far enough to look normal, but not far enough to break the invisible string between us. "Hey, what did you tell her?" my husband asked, grinning, reaching for the bowl of chips. "Nothing," I said too quickly, my voice coming out thinner than I intended. "Just a silly thing," his wife laughed, nudging her husband's shoulder. "You two look guilty. Must have been a good secret." He didn't miss a beat. "Maybe I'm just bad at whispering," he said lightly. But his eyes flicked to mine, holding my gaze for a second too long. The look said everything the room couldn't hear. The game moved on, but I could barely follow the words, the jokes the next. Every time he shifted, I felt it. When he leaned forward to grab his drink, his arm brushed mine again, and my skin woke up like it had been asleep for years. When I laughed at something my husband said, I felt his eyes on my mouth, soft and unreadable, like he was memorizing the curve of it. "I'll get more ice," I blurted, standing too fast. I needed space, air, something that didn't smell like him. "I'll help," he offered casually, grabbing the empty tray before anyone else could. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? We were all friends. That was the dangerous part. In the kitchen, the music was muffled. The air cooler. I opened the freezer with shaky fingers. He set the tray down, then leaned his hip against the counter, watching me like I was the only real thing in the room. "You meant it," he said quietly. Not a question. The ice cracked as it hit the glass bowl. "You shouldn't say things like that," I whispered, staring at my hands instead of him. "We shouldn't feel like this." He stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through my clothes. "But we do," he replied, voice slow. "I've been trying not to for a long time." My chest tightened. "She's my friend," I said. "He's my husband." "And you're," he asked, searching my face like he was looking for the part of me that still belonged to myself. I swallowed hard. I'm the one who told you to take me, I said, finally looking up. Our faces were inches apart, eyes tangled, breath mingling in the dim kitchen light. For a moment, nothing moved. No one entered. The world narrowed to the space between us. A fragile humming line we hadn't crossed yet, but were standing terrifyingly close to. From the living room, a burst of laughter exploded, snapping the spell, but not breaking it. I stepped back half a pace, but my eyes stayed locked on his. We should go back, I murmured. Yeah, he agreed softly, lips curving in a faint, helpless smile. Before we do something we can't pretend was just part of the game. We walked out together, side by side, not touching, but every step felt like a promise, waiting for a decision. We slipped back into the living room like nothing had happened. But inside me, everything had shifted. My husband patted the space beside him and I sank down, forcing a smile as he wrapped an arm over the back of the couch. Across from us, his wife was scrolling through her phone, laughing at some meme and nudging him to look. Normal, familiar, safe. It felt like watching a life I used to fit into and suddenly didn't. Let's put on another song, my husband said, picking up the remote. Something slower. We're all too hyped up. He clicked through a few tracks until a soft, nostalgic song filled the room. The kind that made you remember old summer nights and first kisses. I felt my heart flip. The first time I'd heard the song was with my husband. Back when everything between us felt new. Back when a glance from him could make my whole body light up. Now sitting here with his hand resting loosely near my shoulder. The warmth I felt came from somewhere else. From someone else. You used to love this one, my husband said, smiling at me, eyes kind and tired. You made me dance with you in the kitchen, remember? I remember, I said softly. But the memory tangled with the way another man had just stood with me in a different kitchen under different lights with a different kind of silence between us. Out of habit more than desire, I reached for the bowl on the table at the same time he did. Our fingers brushed just the slightest accidental touch, but it was like an electric line snapping to life. I pulled back quickly, laughing it off, but he didn't. He let his hand linger on the rim of the bowl, knuckles pale, jaw tight for half a second before relaxing again. His wife looked up. You okay? She asked him. Yeah, he said easily, leaning back. Just tired. Long week. Tired. That word carried so much weight. Tired of pretending. Tired of wanting. I didn't know, but his eyes slid to mine for a brief raw moment, and I understood. I wasn't the only one walking around with quiet fractures inside. Conversation drifted to work, vacations, plans that sounded perfect on paper. My husband talked about a trip we'd been meaning to take, but never booked. His wife mentioned how she'd been feeling like they were off lately, but couldn't explain why. The air thickened, heavy with all the things nobody was saying. At one point, he shifted closer to the edge of his seat, elbows on his knees, head bowed. I watched the curve of his shoulders, the tired set of his neck. He looked like he was carrying something he didn't have words for. I wanted to touch him, just a hand on his arm, a simple gesture of I see you. Instead, I dug my nails into my own palm. The song changed again, but the mood stayed low and warm. My husband rested his chin on my shoulder for a moment, affectionate and familiar. I closed my eyes, trying to let it steady me, but all it did was show me the gap between what I had and what I suddenly realized I craved. When I opened my eyes, I found him watching me. Not in a stolen, guilty way this time, but with something softer, almost apologetic, like he was silently saying, I don't know how to stop wanting this either. He looked away first. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. No one leaned in. No one confessed anything. But in the quiet between jokes and songs, in the tiny tremors of almost touch, the truth pressed in on all sides, hot, heavy, and undeniable. We were all sitting in the same room. But the distance between who we were and what we wanted had never felt wider. The night stretched on in soft hazy layers, more music, more jokes, another round of snacks no one really wanted. It felt like everyone was circling something invisible, like we were all pretending nothing in the air had changed when everything had. At some point, his wife got up, rubbing her eyes. "I have an early morning," she murmured, leaning down to kiss his forehead. "I'm going to lie down in the guest room for a bit. Wake me if you need me." My husband yawned theatrically. "Honestly, I might crash here on the couch," he said. "I'm done moving for the night." They laughed easy and unbothered. Plans shifted around us without effort. In minutes, the living room softened. One light turned off, leaving the space lit only by the warm glow of a single lamp and the TV screen idling in the background. My husband stretched out, phone in hand, already drifting into that half-awake scroll. "I'm just going to get some water," I said. My voice sounded calm. My pulse didn't match it. "I'll grab some, too," he added almost automatically. No one questioned it again. In the kitchen, the quiet was thicker now, heavier. No music, just the distant hum of the fridge and the faint sound of a show playing from the living room. I opened the cabinet, reaching for glasses. My fingers fumbled one, and it tipped, wobbling on the edge of the shelf. His hand shot up, steadying it, palm closing over mine instead of the glass. We froze. Our hands were trapped together around fragile nothing, the cool rim pressing into our skin. His palm was warm, steady, fingers curling just enough that I could feel every point where we touched. "Got it," he whispered, but he didn't move away. Neither did I. The glass was safe. We weren't. Slowly, my fingers relaxed, but I didn't pull back. His thumb shifted just a fraction, just enough to brush against the side of my hand. It was the smallest movement, but it felt like a confession, like an apology, like a question all at once. "I keep trying to stop this," he said quietly, eyes on our hands. "Whatever this is." My throat tightened. "Me too." He looked up then, and the way his gaze caught mine stole the air from my lungs. There was no mask left, no careful distance, just raw, aching honesty. Want, fear, guilt, all tingled. "You're not happy, are you?" he asked, voice barely there, not accusing, just knowing. 1,000 rehearsed lines vanished. The truth slipped out instead, softer than a sigh. "I don't even know what happy is anymore," I admitted. "I just know that when you look at me like that, I feel awake." His jaw clenched, eyes burning into mine. For a moment, he leaned in, not enough to close the gap, but enough that I could feel his breath, warm and unsteady, ghost across my lips. The space between us pulsed thin as a heartbeat. My hand, still under his, turned just slightly. Our fingers instinctively sliding between each other's, not fully clasping, but almost. It felt like standing on a ledge with no rail, wind rushing around us, the fall both terrifying and tempting. From the hallway, a floorboard creaked. We both stiffened, but neither of us stepped away. Our fingers loosened, then tightened again, a silent, desperate tug-of-war between what we wanted and what we were terrified of wanting. "I shouldn't," he began, voice low, breaking on the words. "I know," I breathed. We stayed there, suspended, hands barely linked, faces inches apart, every unspoken thing crackling in the air. It felt like a touch that hadn't fully happened. It felt like a kiss that never quite reached the skin. It felt like the exact moment before everything changes. And then, in the thick, humming silence, we both still didn't move. We just burned. It was supposed to end like every other night with yawns, half hugs, and sleepy goodbyes at the door. Instead, the sky opened up. Rain came suddenly, heavy and insistent, blurring the streetlights into soft halos outside the window. My husband, already stretched out on the couch, glanced at the storm and mumbled, "No way I'm driving in that." "I'm out," before sinking deeper into the cushions, phone slipping from his hand. Within minutes, his breathing evened out into the slow rhythm of sleep. His wife had disappeared into the guest room over an hour ago. No sound from the hallway, just closed doors, and the quiet hush of a house dimmed for the night. He stood by the window, arms folded, watching the rain slide down the glass. The only light in the room came from the small lamp in the corner, turning everything warm and soft, like the world had lowered its voice. I hovered near the doorway, pretending to adjust a throw blanket over my husband, fingers lingering a little too long as guilt brushed my heart. He didn't stir. "You should sleep, too," I said quietly, though my voice didn't sound like someone who wanted the night to end. "Can't," he murmured without looking back. "My head's too loud." Something in that answer pulled me toward him. I stepped closer, the floor cool under my bare feet, the air around him warmer, charged. The rain outside drummed a steady hypnotic rhythm like a heartbeat bigger than both of us. "What's it saying?" I asked, stopping just behind him. He exhaled, shoulders rising and falling slowly. "That I'm going to spend the rest of my life wondering about the moments I walked away from." He turned then slowly, carefully, like he was giving me time to change my mind. His eyes found mine in the dim light, and everything we'd swallowed back all night rose between us. The unspoken hunger, the fear, the tenderness we didn't know where to put. I didn't move. "Say something," he whispered. "I don't trust my voice right now," I admitted. "It might tell you everything I've been trying not to feel." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of his chest, the faint brush of his breath on my forehead. He lifted a hand, hesitated halfway, then gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers barely grazed my skin, but the touch ran through me like warm electricity. "Then don't say it," he murmured. "Just stay." The distance between us shrank to a breath. My hand found the edge of his shirt, curling lightly into the fabric, not pulling, just holding. Our foreheads leaned together almost naturally, like our bodies had agreed on something our minds were still arguing about. My breath melted into his slow and uneven. The world outside blurred into rain and shadows. In that fragile space, nothing explicit happened, and yet everything did. His thumb traced a soft, reverent line along my jaw, memorizing the shape of a decision. My fingers slid up to his chest, feeling the thundering of a heart that matched my own. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. Time itself seemed to thin out, stretching around us like a secret. When his lips finally brushed mine, it wasn't a crush. It was a surrender, gentle, trembling, full of all the words we'd never dared to say out loud. The kiss deepened, not with hunger alone, but with something aching and human, as if our bodies were quietly confessing, "I see you. I've always seen you." His hands cradled my face like it was something fragile and sacred. My body leaned into his, fitting against him with a familiarity that felt impossible and inevitable at once. Every point where we touched burned and soothed at the same time, our bodies spoke the words we couldn't say. Apologies. Apologies, longing, need, the softest kind of desperation. The lamp cast us in a small circle of golden light, rain singing against the glass, the rest of the house asleep and unaware. The night didn't explode. It unfolded slowly, breath by breath, until there was no space left between us, only the quiet, trembling truth of finally letting go. And just before everything blurred into something the world would never fully know, there was a single silent moment where we both understood. Nothing would ever be the same again. Morning came too bright. Light pushed through the curtains in pale ribbons, laying across the floor like nothing had changed, like the night hadn't taken two lives, and quietly turned them inside out. My eyes opened to the sound of rain easing off, a softer drizzle tapping the window and the low murmur of someone moving in the kitchen. My husband was still asleep on the couch, one arm thrown over his face, lips parted in a quiet snore. He looked peaceful, untouched by the storm that hadn't come from the sky. A blanket had been pulled over him sometime in the night. Not by me. I sat up slowly, every part of me too aware of my own breathing, of the faint ache in my chest, of the ghost of his hands and his mouth, not on my skin now, but pressed into my memory. It hadn't been graphic, wild, or rushed. It had been careful, too careful, like we both knew we were crossing a line we could never uncross and tried in our own doomed way to make it gentle. I padded toward the kitchen, bare feet quiet on the floor. He stood by the counter, back to me, making coffee. The simple domestic act felt impossibly intimate in a completely different way. He paused when he sensed me, shoulders tensing for half a second before he turned. "Morning," he said softly. His eyes held that same storm, guilt, and something that looked dangerously like tenderness. "Morning," I replied, hugging my arms around myself. For a moment, we just stood there, not touching, not even close enough to. And yet, it felt like we were still standing in front of that window, rain wrapping around the house while our hearts came undone. "I made you a cup," he said, sliding a mug toward me. Our fingers didn't touch this time. That almost hurt more. From down the hall, his wife's voice floated out. "Coffee smells amazing," she called, light and sleepy. Did I miss anything? Everything, I thought. You missed everything. She walked in, hair messy, smile small but real. She kissed his cheek, then smiled at me. "I woke up in the middle of the night," she said casually, reaching for a mug. "Came to get water and saw you two standing by the window. You looked so serious." My heart stopped. "I almost came in," she continued, shrugging, "but you seemed deep in conversation. I didn't want to interrupt." She laughed softly. "Honestly, I'm just glad you guys are close. It makes this whole couple friends thing feel real, you know?" Her words landed like both mercy and punishment. She had no idea. Or maybe she had pieces of it blurred by trust. Our eyes met over the rim of my mug. His were glassy, filled with something that looked like both apology and promise. The connection between us felt heavier now, no longer just tension, something calmer underneath the chaos, something frighteningly close to love, or maybe just two lonely hearts finding air in the same forbidden place. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the warmth ground me. Was it love? Was it escape? I didn't know. All I knew was that the night hadn't just happened. It had revealed something in him, in me, in the crux of our perfect, fragile lives. And as we sat at the table for cups, for people, one quiet secret pulsing between two of us, the morning felt exactly as it was, not clean, not simple, but terribly beautifully real. The days that followed didn't explode. They thinned out. Life returned to its usual shape on the surface. Work messages, grocery lists, inside jokes with my husband, weekend plans discussed over folded laundry. But underneath, something had shifted in a way that couldn't be folded back. We didn't see them for a while. Schedules didn't match. Plans kept getting complicated. It was mercy and punishment in the same breath. I missed her laughter. I missed him in a way I didn't have a right to. At night, my husband would fall asleep beside me, his hand resting lightly over mine, and I would stare at the ceiling, wondering if healing always came with this much quiet ache. Weeks later, a message lit up my phone. "Can we talk?" Just us. We met at a small park in the late afternoon when the sun was low and kind. People walked dogs. Kids chased each other. Life moved around us as if our little storm belonged only to us. He was already on the bench when I arrived, shoulders hunched, elbows on his knees. When he looked up, the first thing I saw was how tired his eyes were and how soft. "Hi," I said, sitting at the other end of the bench, leaving space between us. Space we both felt. "Hi," he replied. "How's everything?" "Still standing," I said with a faint smile. "You trying," he answered. "She's been distant but honest. Said she feels like I've been somewhere else even when I'm in the room." He glanced at me, eyes full of apology. "She's not wrong." I swallowed. He keeps asking if I'm okay. I keep saying I'm just tired. We sat there in silence for a moment, watching leaves move in the breeze. I think he began slowly that what happened between us woke something up, not just between us, but in us. He paused, choosing his words like fragile glass. But if we keep feeding it, everything around us breaks. Them, us, the people we promise to love. The wind brushed a strand of hair across my face. I didn't look at him when I asked. So, what do we do with something that felt that real? His answer came out as a breath. We carry it carefully. Like a beautiful, dangerous thing we're not allowed to touch again. His hand slid along the bench, stopping close to mine, not quite touching. The warmth was there, humming. I turned my palm up, but left that last inch of space between us, a gap full of everything we could have been. I don't regret feeling it, I whispered. I just regret the way we got there. He nodded, eyes shining. Me, too. He shifted closer just enough to lean in. Not to claim, not to take, but to offer a goodbye that felt like an apology and a blessing all at once. His lips rested gently against my forehead. Still reverent, lingering only a moment. My eyes closed, and for that breath in time, my heart loosened around the pain. When he pulled back, there were no promises, no plans, just a quiet understanding. We stood. He gave me a small, aching smile. Go love your life, he said softly. Even the parts that hurt. You too, I answered. And thank you for the part of me you reminded was still alive. We walked away in opposite directions, the memory of us trailing behind like a scent that would fade but never fully disappear. Some nights when the rain comes back and the house is quiet, I remember that game, that whisper, that night, not as a scandal, not as a secret I choke on, but as a turning point, the moment I realized that wanting more and choosing peace are sometimes two different loves.